Welcome to Recovery His Way. I'm your host, Tom Reynolds. We're here on the campus of His Way here in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, I'm blessed to have a couple of friends I've just kind of getting to know recently, Jana and Kelli from the National Child Advocacy Center. And so I appreciate you coming. I got to, the other day, have a visit and tour of what you guys are doing. I know it's really amazing. I mean, I saw the building built over the years and always wondered, I always felt like it was kind of a secret place that I was kind of not supposed to know existed or something. But I was really appreciate your warm welcome and to get to know more about what you're doing. And I'm really fascinated with what you're doing and how what we're doing, you know, how we work together and how we can associate. So thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation. We're very happy to be here.
So I'd like to begin, I guess, with just, most of our folks won't know what the National Child Advocacy Center even is, kind of its history and stuff. So maybe kind of give us a background as to who you are.
Sure. So the National Children's Advocacy Center was created in 1985 by then District Attorney Bud Kramer. And it was really a response to how communities and how different organizations respond to child abuse allegations. So previously, if a child maybe told a teacher or something they were abused, they would have to tell the teacher, they'd have to tell the principal, they'd have to tell law enforcement, they'd have to tell CPS, they'd have to tell all these people and go to all these places and do all these things. And the CAC model kind of really revised that, where now the child comes to the CAC and everybody comes to the CAC. So we can create, we've created a multidisciplinary team, and the whole team comes together, works together to create the best outcome for that child and that family to respond to the abuse.
Okay. All right. So it kind of moves it away from kind of feeling like you're just kind of reporting crimes to kind of more of a caring for the child through this process kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then we
That's
have
cool.
advocates like Jana who work with these families and just work with them for as long as that family needs them, just to help support them and guide them and get the resources that the whole family needs.
Right. So the child comes to you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get, maybe you can walk us through how you get involved with the whole family, how that whole process happens.
Yes. So we get the report from either Department of Human Resources, Child Protective Services. So someone has potentially called in a concern about a child, and there's risk to the child within the home or by someone who's potentially done something to that child. And that's most often child sexual abuse, physical abuse, exposure to domestic violence, potentially neglect.
Mm-hmm.
So CPS will assign an investigator depending on the type of abuse.
CPS,
Child Protective Services.
Okay,
so we're talking about State Department of Human Resources, which is the child welfare agency in Alabama.
Okay.
And their Child Protective Services division have the investigators who investigate those allegations of abuse and neglect. So we'll either get the referral from CPS or from law enforcement. So if it is within the city of Huntsville, it will be a Huntsville Police Department investigator who contacts the Child Advocacy Center and then schedules that child for a forensic interview, which is basically their victim statement about what happened.
Okay.
And so, as Kelli mentioned, prior to child advocacy centers, you had multiple disciplines interviewing a child about the same thing over and over. And so when the child potentially got ready to go to trial, if there'd been an arrest, they were deer in the headlights. They were just overwhelmed and, were not a good witness.
Right.
So now it's not that they'll never have to tell that or talk about that, what happened again, but on the onset of an investigation, it minimizes the number of times they have to repeat it.
Right.
And it's coordinated in a child-friendly setting, which is at the Advocacy Center.
Okay.
Yeah. So how that works with the advocate, we have an advocacy team. So once we get the report, prior to the caregiver, what we refer to as the non-offending caregiver, bringing that child in, we'll reach out. And of course, that potentially is a time when they're really in crisis because maybe they've just found out something that's happened to their child. Mm-hmm. They're overwhelmed. They're concerned. Is my child going to be taken from me, or what? Just unpacking what's occurred. Right. So it can be very overwhelming. So that call really starts building the rapport, and we explain the process, tell them what to expect, tell them things that they might tell their child so that the child is just has an idea of what they're going to be coming
Okay.
up to talk about. And then from there, when they arrive, then we start our process of doing a needs assessment with the caregiver, helping basically anything that caregiver needs. We want to help them access those resources and services so they can best focus on the child.
Okay. Well, I mean, when I think about what you're describing earlier, I mean, before child advocacy started, which you all do, it sounds almost like the child goes through a traumatic event, and then the rest of it almost becomes a greater traumatic event, right? To have to repeat this over in very uncomfortable circumstances, in places that probably children don't want to have to be, all that kind of stuff. And so you've kind of taken that second aspect of the trauma away and kind of helped create a nurturing environment for them to go through that process. Was that?
Absolutely.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
When you get involved, are you more involved then with the child, or you end up being more involved with the parents or family support along the way, or how does that work?
Well, as a family advocate, my role is to support the caregiver. So often that includes helping educate the parent about child sexual abuse, dynamics of child sexual abuse, helping them if it's been intimate partner violence, helping them if they have other basic needs, housing. Sometimes if the offender potentially is their spouse, then and maybe they are not employed, and so that person is the breadwinner. So we're talking about financial concerns and stress, addressing all those things. So again, they can focus on the child. However, once the child has the forensic interview, and if they need a medical, they also get that at the NCAC.
Okay.
But after those things happen, then it's determined. Do they need a trauma therapy? So that's really significant. So we have therapists then who will, provide therapy services for that child and the family. And those are all evidence-based therapy models, that trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy. And it depends on the age of the child too. So we have lots of therapy that we provide. And then a child can graduate from that therapy program.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a real accomplishment.
so it's all about coping skills and communication and being able to, move to the next level and start the healing process.
Right. That is awesome. I love the fact that, making it so child sensitive and child aware is really important, because so much of addressing this issue is shame and guilt, and especially for a child, a lot of stress because it's confusing to them. Are they bad people? All those kind of issues that can help and advocate for them through that is really wonderful. You're from the National Child Advocacy, so explain the national part. I realize you've talked about Huntsville calling you and being here in Huntsville, obviously, but you're national. What does that mean?
Well, it really just means we were the first one. We were the first one created in the world. And since then, we have helped to create over 1,100 CACs in the U.S.
Wow, okay.
They have some little stats here. We have CACs in 41 countries, and 9 more countries are working on developing CACs. So we also, we serve Madison County and the surrounding area, but we also get to work with these other CACs that are developing and help influence how they develop CACs all around the world. Okay. So it's really great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. So are there others in this? Is it just one per state, or is it a county organized thing, or how does that work?
The Children's Advocacy Center?
Or just, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, there's the Alabama Network of Child Advocacy Centers. So there's actually, if you look at if you think about an umbrella, and the top of the umbrella is going to be the National Children's Alliance, and they're out of Washington, D.C. Okay. So they accredit all child advocacy centers in the United States. Okay. And so then in states, in individual states, there also another level where it's the state
chapter.
State chapter of child advocacy centers. Okay. So they're all kind of interconnected.
Okay.
And they're not necessarily in every county. And some of the larger counties have multiple advocacy centers. But we have, I don't know how many we have in Alabama, but we have them in several counties. Okay. Throughout the state.
Right. So, that's awesome.
Yeah. And we work with the district attorney's office. So that's important to remember, because those are the prosecutors who are going to be prosecuting those cases of child abuse. And the Children's Advocacy Center in Huntsville, the NCAC, our prosecutors are co-located there. as are our law enforcement investigators. So it makes it really just collaboration and case coordination is just really most effective in addressing this.
Right. That's awesome. Well, that sounds like you have a lot of great resources, a lot of great things. So if somebody's listening to this or watching this, it sounds like it'd be expensive. So how does a person get involved? What's it cost for them to go through this process? I mean, you're obviously offering a lot of resources to people. So how does that work?
So all of our services are free of charge. We are completely grant funded. We're mostly federally funded, but we also have state and local funds also. But yeah, no charges to any of our families.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah.
So specifically, obviously, His Way is a recovery program. So one of the things I was interested in is how, as we watch this drug epidemic in our society growing, unfortunately, and the death rates and all that from fentanyl overdoses and all these things going on, how is all this, from your point of view, impacting children? You're advocates for children. So how are these things, I guess, impacting kids? Mm-hmm. And what are we doing, or what can be done to help them in their challenges?
Mm-hmm. So not only have children's advocacy centers, but CPS has also seen an increase in children affected by parental substance use, whether it's child deaths or just more kids coming into the foster care system due to parental substance use and things that can, occur from that, whether it be abuse or neglect or domestic violence. It's just on the rise. We've seen a lot of child death cases recently, and that's what really kind of helped push us to get more involved and to apply for a grant with the Department of Justice to create a community response to how children are affected by the opioid crisis, and how is it that our community can come together working with all of our community partners to really make sure these children are getting all the support and resources that they need. So
you said that child death cases are increasing. What do you mean by, you're talking about kids in drugs, or are you talking about kids being abused by people in drugs? What are we talking about death cases here?
Both, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've had a couple cases where, young children have gotten, maybe into substances or something, and that has caused the child to die. Mm-hmm. Or maybe the parent was using substances, and because they, were struggling with their own issues, they couldn't parent to the fullest, and so that child's death, was the cause of the parent not being as aware of what's going on, or not responding to that child as much as needed.
Okay.
So, fentanyl exposure. We've had a couple of child deaths where there's been secondary fentanyl exposure. The child, as Kelli mentioned, or several children have accidentally, gotten into fentanyl, and it is, toxic and so deadly. And, there have been cases where there has been, first responders who get there and they're able to revive the child, but there have been cases where they've died. So it's super sad. And then there's a number of a large increase from children who are substance exposed at birth. So they've tested positive, and and that's going to lead to parental separation most often, because DHR will get called, and the kids are either going to be placed with a safe person, their grandparents most often, or another relative if they can secure that person, or foster care, which is, not the best place for kids to be, especially if they're separated from their family. I'm so thankful for foster parents and what they do. I always say it's a ministry. But absolutely. Children, want to be with, it's a huge trauma for a child to be removed from their parent.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting side story here, but one of the guys who graduated our program a few years ago, he at that time was divorced from his wife. They've since reconciled and remarried, and their kids were all grown at that point, and they were trying to figure out what they needed to do with the rest of their life, so they became licensed foster parents.
That's awesome.
And so they have had 4 kids in their home, and kind of really cool too, because while 2 of them have moved on, and they have 2 boys right now. The 2 that moved on, they've continued to maintain a relationship, and they have a great relationship with the dad, and they're getting the dad to come to church with them and really helping them. And so it's really been a cool thing to see that, a guy who was absolutely homeless and destitute when he came here a few years ago, is now a foster parent.
That's great.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
yes.
That's giving back.
Yeah.
For certain.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Really...
So, So when you deal with children and the impact, I mean, what kind of things are you doing or trying to do to help that situation, the impact that children are experiencing because of substance abuse? Both, I mean, I don't know if there's programs for the parents to help them. Is there programs for kids? And I guess the other aspect of this is kids getting involved in drugs, obviously, in the future and those kind of things. So maybe you can share with us a little bit about maybe some programs you got going on or things you support in the community to kind of help with those issues.
Absolutely. So we created a specialized multidisciplinary team made up of 18 different community partners, including treatment providers, peer support specialists, medical providers, children's rehabilitation, Not One More, Partnership for Drug-Free Community. So we can really try to look at the entire family and really focus on each person, because, you know, addiction and substance use disorder is not just about the one person that's struggling, the whole family gets affected by it. So we want to make sure that that kiddo, whatever they may have seen or gone through, whether they were separated from parents, whether they, you know, witnessed maybe domestic violence, maybe they witnessed parents overdosing, maybe they witnessed parents getting arrested, whatever may have impacted that child, we want to make sure that they're getting the resources and the therapy and the services that they need. That way we can maybe prevent, you know, substance use in that child. We also want to make sure that the caregiver that's now caring for that child, a lot of times we work with the grandparents, is getting the resources and the education they need to kind of educate them on this really is what substance use disorder is, not, you know, maybe what people thought of 20 or 30 years ago. And also make sure that, you know, if you're a grandparent that's now raising your grandchildren, parenting is a lot different than it was a long time ago. So how can we help with that? And then we also reach out to the parent, and if they're open to services or treatment, you know, we're going to get them connected and get them into whatever we can connect them with.
Okay. All right. That's wonderful. Well, so how would people connect with you guys? I mean, if they're facing a situation, maybe they need even just maybe before a trauma happens. I mean, obviously that's where we'd love to be, right? Is before things like that happen. What kind of things are available, you know, that parents could do to kind of prepare themselves or deal with things themselves to be able to kind of prepare their kids or help their kids? Or do you have any suggestions on that?
We have, as I mentioned earlier, we do have some therapy programs that are geared toward, of course, kids who've had trauma. But we also have therapy for parents that may have young children and they're building attachment. They're needing to have skills to interact with the kids in a positive way. So there might be some risk factors there, but child-parent psychotherapy is one of the therapy models that is offered, and that is even for if a pregnant mom is coming in, so the child isn't even born, but there may be some risk factors, and they are like, need to know about child development, you know, what happens when the baby's born, and then, you know, things to look for. And then if they're a little older, then, you know, how to regulate the emotions that a kid might be having. And if the child is even, you know, from 3 to 5 and starts engaging in, you know, tantrums and just having emotional outbursts or just difficulty following directions, there's a parent-child interaction therapy that is actually a coaching type therapeutic intervention for that parent. So that's it. And then we didn't mention NCAC actually has an entire prevention program that offers a lot of services to parents. So there are parenting classes, and there's individual parenting, one-on-one type program. There's also Healthy Families, which is a national grant called Healthy Families of America. So you have a first-time mom, and there may be some risk factors. So either in the last trimester or within a few weeks after the baby's born, a case manager will connect with that mom and then come into the home and can work with them up until the child's 5 years old. Okay. It's pretty cool. Yeah. And there's some others too, but those kind of are the crux of really.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, you know, when we get, obviously, guys that come in our program, usually they're coming either because they're homeless and they're destitute, some traumatic things have happened in their lives, they're coming from jail or prison or those kind of things. But when we counsel and work with them, a lot of it goes back to childhood traumas and goes back to a lot of events that happened, homes they grew up in. I mean, I met with a young man, just a day or so ago that he and his mom have been homeless and out using together, and she's a single mom. She doesn't, know, and she's been raising him and trying to do her best with her own struggles and that type of thing. And so I appreciate what you're doing in terms of even preventative, because so much of this prevention really goes back to when a kid's 2 and 3 and 4 years old, not just when they're 18 and they make a bad decision at a party. It's about all the things that go into their development way before that sets them up for those temptations and struggles. So I think it's really critical.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we often say, NCAC is not a substance use treatment provider. We're not. Our wheelhouse has primarily been child abuse, but we do see there's such a correlation with substance use disorder, person struggling with that, and child abuse. And as you mentioned, they're typically with child abuse, neglect is the number one form of child abuse. Overall, neglect, and then physical abuse, and then sexual abuse. But neglect is often tied into the substance use disorder, and the person with that, and then the other types of abuse can potentially happen because of that. But we also want to make sure that we really can connect with a parent if you mentioned about being incarcerated. So our CARES team, when we meet, we review cases that we've received. A lot of those cases come from the police department, or maybe somebody's been picked up for a DUI or a drug charge, or the child's been present. So we'll get those cases, and we will reach out to that parent. If they've been incarcerated and they're getting out, if we can help them connect with the recovery programs and just a peer support, or if they need a drug assessment, Partnership for a Drug-Free Community is a wonderful resource that we have. So that kind of thing as well. So
and we also try to help parents who are involved with DHR work on what is in your ISP plan. What are the goals that you're trying to do for DHR, and how can we help support you and get you to complete those? Because the end goal of this whole thing is to have a family happy, healthy, and reunified in long-term recovery. So,
absolutely. And I know it's difficult at times. I know particularly with DHR and stuff like that, a lot of people's experience is negative, right? They're fearful that all it means is that you're coming to take away my kids, and then you put expectations on me to live up to that I don't even know how to do. And so then I feel kind of at a loss as to how to get my kids back and that kind of thing. So the fact that you're coming in and helping them kind of win, to succeed here, to get to the ultimate end game. I know DHR's ultimate end game is the same. It's just unfortunately they have to be on the front end of some of those conflicts at times. Well, I really appreciate you coming in today. I appreciate you sharing. I hope more people become aware of what you're doing. I know I have become more aware of it, and I appreciate that. Maybe you could share a little bit. How would people contact you? What are some avenues that would be good to, if phone numbers, websites, that kind of thing?
So our website is nationalcac.org. And then you can go under local services, and it talks about all of our different services. And one of the options is the CARES team. And that would be what you look for is our CARES team. And on there, it has a button that says call us, and it goes to our building. Or it says need help, and you can send us an email, and it asks if you're looking, who you're looking for services for. If it's for a child, it's for a parent, it's for a caregiver, and it can be for all of the above, because really we're going to offer services to everybody anyway. Or I can give you our phone number. Our phone number is 256-327-3853.
Okay.
And every family that gets referred to us gets an advocate, and so we reach out to every family.
Okay. Awesome. Well, that's wonderful. Jana and Kelli, thank you for coming in today. Thanks for sharing your story, and I appreciate what you guys are doing to make our community a better place.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, because it's all about relationships. It's all about community partners, and that's what we feel like that we have met with you, and so now y'all are a part of that.
That's right. That's great. And thank you for listening and watching us today. If you'd like to know more about His Way and the work that we do in recovery, you can check out our website at hiswayinc.org.